The rain poured relentlessly over the sprawling estate, pattering against the grand windows of the Wainwright mansion. Inside, in the soft, dimly lit study, young Evelyn Wainwright sat quietly, her fingers tracing the edges of an old, leather-bound book. She was 14, the only child of a billionaire whose empire spanned continents, yet she carried a silence heavier than any fortune could ease. Evelyn had been mute since birth, her voice locked away in a world she could not fully share. People often whispered about her, calling her fragile or distant, but to Evelyn, the world was vivid in ways words could never capture. Her father, Charles Wainwright, often watched her from the doorway, a mixture of pride and helplessness in his eyes. Despite his wealth, no amount of doctors, specialists, or therapies had succeeded in drawing a single word from his daughter. He had poured millions into her care, yet nothing had bridged the chasm between her heart and her voice. He sometimes wondered if he had failed her, not in the luxury he could provide, but in the simple, human need to be heard. One stormy evening, as lightning split the sky and the thunder roared, a mysterious delivery arrived at the mansion. A small, ornate bottle, shimmering with an iridescent glow, sat upon the mahogany desk, accompanied by no note, only a strange sense of urgency. Evelyn's fingers hovered over the bottle, drawn to its luminescence as though it held some secret meant only for her. Her mother, long gone from her life, had left behind only faint memories and a lingering sadness in the corridors of the house. Yet tonight, Evelyn felt a strange warmth, a whisper of hope in the air. The bottle's cap seemed to beckon her, and against the shadow of caution that clung to her like a second skin, she lifted it to her lips. The liquid was cool and sweet, a taste that seemed to dance along her tongue and settle deep into her chest. At first, nothing happened. She blinked, feeling the familiar heaviness of silence pressing against her. Then, faintly, she heard a sound, not outside herself, but within, a fluttering, like the wings of a bird stirring from its nest. Her heart raced as she tried again, whispering a syllable into the empty air. And then it came, barely audible at first, but undeniably there, hello. Tears sprung to her eyes as she repeated it, each word gaining strength, each breath filled with a newfound power. The impossible had happened. Evelyn could speak. Her first words spilled into the room like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Charles entered then, drawn by her voice, and saw her sitting there, eyes wide, cheeks flushed with the exhilaration of discovery. He knelt beside her, trembling, and whispered, "Evelyn, you're speaking." She nodded, laughter spilling from her lips, a sound so pure it seemed to heal the echoes of their shared pain. The news spread like wildfire through the city and beyond. Yet for Evelyn, the greatest revelation was not the astonishment in others' eyes but the discovery of herself. She could speak, yes, but more importantly, she could connect, with her father, with the world, and most unexpectedly, with people she had never met. One day, she visited a local orphanage with her father, driven by a curiosity she could not explain. The children there, abandoned and broken in ways similar to her own loneliness, watched her with cautious wonder. Evelyn knelt, speaking softly, her voice steady and kind, and the children leaned in, their eyes reflecting hope for the first time. She told them stories, laughed with them, and sang gentle songs she had invented. In those moments, she realized that her voice was not merely for herself, it was a gift meant to be shared. But the true test of Evelyn's newfound voice came. Unexpectedly, a terrible accident struck the city. A fire broke out in a crowded apartment building. News of the blaze spread rapidly, and panic gripped the streets. Evelyn, sensing the urgency, convinced her father to bring the mansion's resources to aid the victims. Without hesitation, she guided rescue efforts, directing teams, comforting children, and giving instructions where chaos threatened to take hold. Her voice, once silenced, became a beacon of hope amid the smoke and fear. In the aftermath, as the last flames were extinguished and the frightened residents found safety, Evelyn sat quietly with a small boy clutched in her arms. His mother had been saved but was gravely injured. The boy trembled, tears streaking his soot-covered face. Evelyn leaned close, speaking softly, "You are safe now. You are not alone." The boy's sobs subsided, replaced by a fragile smile, and in that instant, Evelyn understood the profound responsibility her voice carried. It could heal, it could guide, and it could transform despair into hope. News outlets broadcast the story far and wide. The billionaire's daughter, once mute, had become a hero in a single act of courage and compassion. Yet Evelyn cared little for accolades. What mattered was the quiet realization that she could make a difference, that her voice, her words, were instruments of kindness in a world that too often whispered in fear and doubt. In the days that followed, Evelyn continued to visit the orphanage, the hospital, and community centers. She became a bridge between the privileged and the vulnerable, a reminder that empathy and generosity could exist even in the most unlikely places. Her father, watching her work tirelessly, felt a pride deeper than any material wealth could ever provide. He finally understood that the greatest fortune was not measured in money or power, but in the capacity to give, to comfort, and to love. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the mansion's gardens glowed with the last rays of light, Evelyn sat with her father once more. "I'm glad you're here," she said, her voice soft but unwavering. "I'm glad we're together." Charles held her hands, feeling the warmth of her words seep into his soul. "And I'm glad you found your voice," he replied. "It's more beautiful than I ever imagined." Evelyn smiled, looking out over the estate, the city beyond, and the countless lives she had touched. She thought of the mysterious liquid, the improbable chance that had unlocked her words, and realized it was not magic alone that had changed her. It was the courage to embrace the unknown, to trust in herself, and to offer kindness without expectation. Years later, the story of Evelyn Wainwright became legend, not just because she spoke, but because she inspired countless others to find their own voices. Children who had lost hope learned to speak up. Families in despair discovered compassion. Communities, once divided by fear and doubt, found unity in her example. Evelyn understood now that every voice mattered, every act of generosity rippled outward, and that even the smallest word could ignite monumental change. On a quiet night, with stars shimmering like diamonds over the estate, Evelyn stood by her window, gazing at the world she had come to love with every fiber of her being. She whispered to herself, softly, "We can all be miracles to someone else." And for the first time, she realized that her silence had not been a limitation but a preparation, a period of waiting until the world was ready to hear the fullness of her heart. Her journey had begun with a mysterious bottle, yes, but it had flourished through empathy, courage, and the boundless power of human connection. Evelyn's voice, once absent, now resonated not only in her own life, but in the hearts of countless others. In her words, they found hope. In her laughter, they found joy. And in her unwavering compassion, they discovered a truth more profound than any treasure. The greatest gift one could give was the gift of being truly heard, understood, and loved. And so, Evelyn Wainwright, the millionaire's daughter who had once lived in silence, became a living testament to the impossible made real, the quiet transformed into song, and the simple act of kindness into a legacy that would echo forever.